Arc Raiders' newest update, Flashpoint, is here, capping off March with another content update and a large helping of quality of life adjustments so that you have both new experiences and content, but also new ways to interact with the game. Today, it was a quantity-wise bigger update than I expected to see after our discussion and what had been revealed before the launch. So today, we're taking a look at what you need to know so you can jump in with all the information at your disposal. Drop your thoughts as we go along, drop a like if you enjoyed the video, and make sure to subscribe to stay up there with all things Arc Raiders and even more FPS content. I'd love to have you in the community. And finally, check out my friends over at Advanced GG, where code Espresso can get you 10% off your order. But for now, let's get into it. So while we'll talk about the content here first, I do think that some of the best changes that came out of this update today were actually some really good quality of life changes, which we'll get to in a second. But first, again, starting out with that main content that you can actually see and interact with. First, the big thing for this update is the new close scrutiny arc operation. The basis of it is to push everyone towards the assessor. So you have lessened loot on that outskirts and in normal locations. This basically a giant condition for the loot of the assessor pods. So at around 2 minutes to 2 minutes and 30 seconds of every match, the first assessor will drop. You can tell where it's going to be coming in from the burst of yellow trails in the sky. Later, you'll end up finding it visible after it's landed in the world by the red lights pointing to the sky. From here, I've not been close enough, save for one time, but there's a maybe little grace period where I found that was relatively untouched and not under massive surveillance by the Arc, but it's possible I just got stupid lucky on that one. So the assessor, though, it will act somewhat like the harvester puzzle, like very loosely, but that's kind of like the only thing I can really think of in a general perspective to compare it to, where you have 3 breachable locations you have to wait for the platform to push out for before you can get on top of it and then take a stab at breaching that. Now, when you do, about the halfway mark of that breach, you'll end up having usually 2 small and 1 big arc that could be a vaporizer or rocketeer there. They'll spawn to keep you at bay and to be a deterrent there. But I also think it's possible that it could be just like 3 smaller arc. I think I had that once or twice as well. But anyways, once you are breaching that, you will have arc enemies spawn in on you and try and take you out. Now, you can't just breach it and go for it, loot it and get out, but you're putting yourself in danger there. But it's entirely up to you. This gets exceptionally chaotic if you end up trying to breach multiple at once, or you have other players in the lobby trying to breach this around you, because at 3, well, yeah, it spawns those 3 arc, but 3 times, so a potential of 9 enemies right in that immediate vicinity, pending no other timed or proximity-based additional arc that are also there. I've had to fight like 4 or 5 vaporizers in a small area of space before, and it gets insanely hectic. So ultimately, you'll end up getting new things like the assessor matrices, vaporizer regulators from the surrounding enemies, and even things like the new weapon blueprint of the Delabra, that new legendary shotgun. Next up, we also saw added in was the Delabra and the Canto. The Delabra is a legendary energy shotgun. Seems to be assessor loot only, exclusive to that loot pool. I've yet to personally find one, but it appears to be in there. This requires 3 shredder gyros, magnetic accelerators, and vaporizer regulators. So quite the mismatch of components there. But this, I've seen some clips, it looks actually kind of crazy in PvP, which is not what I expected at all whenever they talked about adding another shotgun into the fold. But apparently it is capable of downing a heavy shield in 2 shots, which is crazy. Like, it has to be the charge burst of it, but insanely powerful. The Canto is a rare medium SMG. This seems to be in the standard loot pools, so Raider cache loot pools perhaps. I've seen people getting it in Hurricane caches, where this requires 2 advanced mechanical components, 5 magnets, and 3 medium gun parts to craft. This appears to be quite fast firing, but the recoil shoots up quite a bit, which is a balancing element to the weapon, given the SMG ends up having medium ammo, so it's going to do more damage by default at that point. Then we end up also having another utility item of the Surge Coil. This requires electrical components, sensors, and a Hornet driver when found. This thing, based off of early clips, looks a bit crazy. I initially thought when described it would be like a utility item like the cloak that you could end up holding, but it is a deployable item that will shock anything like crazy when it gets in that range. Might be kind of a nightmare for Stella runs, depending on what types of lobbies you're in. Possibly good for maybe keeping the Arc at bay during the assessor runs as well, but not entirely sure on that one just yet. We also have a new project of the high gain antenna that only has 3 different levels to it, but it is something that will reward you with functional gameplay items as you go along. Some epic level attachments, a Bobcat 3, a snap hook, and as of completion, 500 Raider tokens. So a little bit more currency to add to your bank if that's something you're interested in. Now, one unfortunate byproduct of this new introduction is that the weather monitoring system has actually been removed, and there was no communication at all with that. It was said pre-launch that these sort of projects wouldn't be removed without any communication, and most of the time wouldn't be removed at all, that they were available for whenever. So whether this is like a bug with the UI that it just pushed it down to an area where players can't actually access that, whether it was actually removed, we don't know at the moment, but unfortunately there was just no communication with this, and it seems to be gone for those that didn't complete it just yet. So that one's a little bit of a bummer. As for the last of the visible content updates, we ended up seeing 2 new cosmetic set introduced. The Wasp Hunter set for $20 real, but it comes along with the skin set, backpack, Scrappy helmet, and a Raider tool, plus the 2,400 Raider tokens. So basically you're getting this for the price of the coins, but then the rest of the bundle is free by sort of relative comparison there. The Brigade set was added also, which is the first of those marketed 3 cosmetic sets you'll see there, but again, we don't want to talk too much about skins. But that was the content that is functionally and visible here with this within the game that was added. We also saw a notable number of quality of life updates. The first of which I want to talk about is the Scrappy overhaul. Now we had that hunch that the update we had with Shrouded Sky, the change to the UI, was previewing something, and that's the case here. It is something that now utilizes that whole thing. You don't have the dead space like you did before, but anyways, you still have your basic haul at its very core foundational level. That's what we've had before, your standard raid and duration-based yields. However, now that you can feed him, it can boost those yields above what was previously the 50 cap. So you're no longer beholden to that cap, it appears, if you feed him. You can feed him for a round of returns, and then those returns can be collected for up to 5 raids. So you're no longer capped by amount, but rather the amount of time that it takes you to cash out on what he brings you. I've seen some that appear to be ridiculous. I don't know exactly what the highest you can end up getting is, but it definitely is something that now will showcase what those 12% yields and stuff for the expedition. It's now definitely compounding on top of what we already see for the basic feeding overhaul on top of that. Now, the feeding queue is something that you can deposit upwards of 6 food items that will tick away and contribute to your yields. And if you do so, you do that consistently, you can also get some pretty crazy bonus stuff, it seems, with players reporting having seen Queen and like Matriarch reactors in there as well. So that's crazy. Like, where'd Scrappy get that? Anyways, we also saw crafting improvements introduced with this one, where you can now quickly acquire missing materials directly from the crafting view. You don't have to jump back and forth between different windows. You can end up recycling, refining, or purchasing missing materials, being now available in the same window to complete said crafting that would otherwise be stopped before this update. Other than that, there were some ones that are more minor, but honestly very good quality of life adjustments as well. Patch notes now can be readily available from the boot menu in-game after an update, so something you can read up on that before you even jump into your first raid, advertised directly in-game to you. There's an increased loot value in all locked rooms with a scaled increase depending on the key rarity. So this means that you're like green keys. They'll give you better yields, absolutely, but it seems like the epic or pink keys will end up giving you even better loot that you end up having. Now, of course, those are more few and far in between, but still very valuable and increased. That I've done a little bit of testing, had a couple of keys to spare during the stream earlier today, that it definitely felt like I was getting better yields out of that. Another quality of life change is that players who build their own loadout are now more likely to join fresh servers. Now, this is pretty interesting to hear, but it should be mentioned there's a dev note that goes along with this, where they said, as a part of an ongoing look at free loadout usage and how it impacts the game, we're going to bias the matchmaking to put players with custom loadouts into fresh servers. This won't be a guarantee, as map choice, time of day, and region will still affect the number of players available to matchmake. This does have an effect on overall matchmaking times, so we'll be keeping a close eye on it. Free loadouts are primarily meant as a safety net for players' personal economy. With these kits, those who play carefully should have enough to build themselves back up, accomplish a few tasks, or make a bit of progress. So that's pretty nice. I'm sure that that's something that a lot of people, they like to see that balance here where, yes, again, a free kit, there's not really any risk involved with that. So to be able to have that sort of time gate on a reward that you could immediately jump into, it's a nice little note here. So it is something that is now live in the game. Will it be there forever? We don't know. This could be something that is adjusted, removed, but it's something you're testing at the moment. Another big one is that all party members can now see active map conditions while in Speranza. Members can also ping destinations they'd like to depart to, which is pretty cool. Now, in addition to that, like by extension with that, you do have that secondary sort of menu to choose a destination when queuing up that might take a little bit of time to break that muscle memory of queuing up how you have since launch, but it's a nice little addition, I think. Another smaller thing, but a welcome change, is the inventory screen now shows its stash value. For those around the expedition time, if you were curious before the actual update to add the expedition window was brought online, you'd have to go and select every single item in your inventory, which for 280 or 90 items, that's a lot of clicking just to end up seeing the value, and you better hope you didn't hit sell on all that kind of stuff. But you can now see this all in one single location. You now have the ability to hide your HUD on console, giving some nice cinematic views here with this. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine this is also something that is in the settings and not really a hotkey whenever you end up having this on console. But on PC, you still have the default F10 command to end up quickly taking away the HUD, but you have the options of visible, crosshair and interactions only, crosshair only, and completely hidden. So you have a couple of different ways to cycle through that now, which is definitely nice. But those are your like main quality of life changes, but there's still plenty of balancing and things like that. Arc, we saw the Rocketeers will now take less damage from collisions. That'll no longer be instantly destroyed upon impact when stunned. They reduced the chance for multiple Fireflies to spawn together. Definitely nice. That was a big pain in the behind. They decreased the time it takes for Arc to identify players that are very close in front of them. And this is something that by extension, like I definitely noticed in my stream earlier today, and people were talking like, hey, did you notice that Arc feel a little more aggro? Yes, but it seems like this might be a reason for that. But I also feel like the distance in which like the radius that they could detect a player was expanded, or maybe just the new vaporizer has an extended range, because that thing was just out to get me today in some situations. Thought I was in the clear? Nope, 2 of them on me. Items, your free augments can now be recycled into 6 plastic and rubber parts. The Firefly Burner now has an extra spicy functionality that can be used when tossed. Gameplay adjustments, shredders are of course now added to all maps, only during certain map conditions on damn battlegrounds though, and it's not something you'll see these in the new map condition as well, the close scrutiny operation. So at the very least, it's nice that as hectic and as insane as that condition can be, at least you're not also dealing with a shredder on top of that. Dam specifically, they added more sentinel spawn points and adjusted the area coverage for leapers, bombardiers, and bastions to improve navigation, so that range in which they can roam is expanded for each of those a little more. Buried City, they fixed multiple spots where players could get stuck, also added more spawn points for the Sentinel and made those spawns more consistent, and as well adjusted the coverage of Leapers, Bombardiers, and Bastions for navigation and variety. They also increased the variety of Leaper, Bombardier, Bastion, and Rocketeer distribution during Night Raid in particular. Bluegate added more Sentinel spawn points, go figure. They adjusted the coverage for certain big enemies to improve navigation and reduce the number of comets during the Hurricane map condition, which is definitely nice, because if you played that on Bluegate, you'd see that there are multiple times in which they ended up having 2 spawning right next to each other, and it could definitely be something that got you killed. Locked Gate in particular got adjusted, where some side entrances now unlock with a main gate. Security codes now come from code printers instead of containers, and security codes expire upon extraction. So that seemingly being something that gives you a bit more of a stable spawn for each of these. But again, if a player extracts with those, it is something that those are then null and void. So while yes, you seemingly can troll players by taking them out of the game, you should hopefully be able to find them again from the static points of the code printers throughout the map in that match. Spaceport, they added more Sentinel spawn points and increased the chances for higher tier loot for completing the rooftop activity during the launch tower loot map condition. Additionally, they added a delay to the final antenna for the hidden bunker map condition and activating the bunker before it opens, so as to probably disincentivize camping the bunker and actually doing it yourself then at that point, and so that no one really kind of takes the loot you may have worked for. Now, as for content and bug fixes, the big one that I would definitely point out is they reduced pose popping when starting to sprint, improved sprint transitions, and refined animations when starting movement from idle. So this makes those movement animations actually getting going a bit less jarring. I had seen some people talking about how it gives them some motion sickness, so nice to see that this is now more refined and better in that sense, where you don't have to deal with that. And finally, your audio changes, they improve the stability of proximity chat, they improve positional audio clarity for other players, opening and closing doors can now be heard from further away, and they improve directional audio for flying arc. That was definitely something that was immediately noticeable to me. So that's where we're at here with this update. Again, in terms of quantity, quite a bit of things that were added or adjusted. Surprisingly, no weapon tuning. While I don't necessarily know if there's really too much of a like it needs to be fixed standout, for a major update like this, I was kind of assuming at least 1 or 2 things would be tweaked here and there, but doesn't appear to be. So we'll see what the next couple of weeks holds in relation to weapon balancing. Of course, if we end up having a legendary shotgun that's 2-shotting heavy shields, that might get adjusted here, but we'll see. For now, though, that is the Flashpoint update and everything that did change. So let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think of this update? You like it? Dislike it? Whatever the case, drop your thoughts. If you guys enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And of course, if you aren't new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Arc Raiders and even more FPS content. I'd love to have in the community. But for now, thanks so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.